The global monetary reset is accelerating as this week China unveils sweeping new gold policies, from expanding their vaults in Hong Kong to creating cross-border clearing systems, all designed to cement China's grip on the future monetary order. See, China's not just buying gold, they are building the infrastructure to control how gold is traded, cleared, and priced, creating a gold bridge for the East that the BRICS nations can all rally behind while the dollar is sidelined. But this doesn't just impact those in China. This impacts everyone here in the United States or anyone holding dollar or dollar-denominated assets. Because as confidence in the dollar fails and China repositions gold at the center, well, then the dollar loses its power, and with it, the value of your checking, savings, and retirement. In case you missed it this week, Hong Kong expands gold market and invites China to participate. This goes way beyond just how much gold China is stockpiling, because it has to do with the institutions they're creating, the infrastructure, and the planning. Now, let me explain. It says here that they unveiled a raft of policies, including pledges to increase the city's capacity for holding bullion to 2,000 tons, and establishing a central clearing system for gold. That is what piqued my interest. This is a huge move, okay? Most people know that gold is significantly undervalued. If you don't know that and you're wondering, what do I mean? Isn't it simple supply and demand? It's actually not that simple. We have the COMEX, the New York Commodity Exchange, and the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, that heavily control that spot price of gold that we see every day. They do this through a process called rehypothecation, which essentially is creating layers and layers of paper claims on the same piece of physical gold. So you could have X amount of gold in the vaults, and you could have 100 claims over on it, meaning there isn't enough gold for how many paper claims they have out there. So the spot price of gold is largely controlled by derivatives and speculation. So there has long been many who have believed that these institutions, Western-led, dollar-dominated institutions, artificially suppress the price of gold in order to help keep the dollar strong. But if we now have an Eastern institution, if we have Hong Kong creating their own central clearing system for gold, which essentially is like the plumbing, right, the middleman between gold trades, well, that could have a huge impact on this kind of artificial suppression around the price of gold. This gives them leverage, right? This leverage that could increase the spot price of gold significantly, something I'm going to talk about more in a second. But first, it doesn't stop there. The article then goes on to say that in June, the SGE, which is the Shanghai Gold Exchange, China's primary platform for physical gold trading, opened its first offshore vault in Hong Kong and launched 2 contracts for international investors, a step towards reducing reliance on the US dollar and promoting wider use of the yuan in international trade. Okay, this is big. So remember the COMEX and the LBMA that I was telling you about, these Western-dominated institutions that price everything in dollars? Well, now we're going to have China pricing its gold, of course, in yuan, meaning that gold will be the anchor, but we're going to have more yuan being exported out, right? So they are trying to push their currency more into the mainstream, but saying, hey, it's backed by all this gold, using gold almost as a loophole. And again, if you don't believe me, this has been a busy week for China. Another article came out this week talking about how China does smooth gold imports as prices soar and yuan rallies. So they are making plans to ease restrictions on gold imports, essentially trying to speed up the amount of gold that they're bringing into the country, right? They're doing it through a variety of ways, like expanding the application of their permits, extending the time on those permits, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, they're doing this because they want to set themselves up at the center, but do you think that they are so foolish that they are stockpiling as much gold as possible? They are creating all this infrastructure, but then they're going to let the West, the COMEX and the LBMA, control prices, right? It doesn't make any sense. So it says here in this article that one of the reasons, right, the wider context is Beijing's ambition to strengthen its influence over the pricing of the commodities it imports, right? So not only during the import process, but then eventually they're trying to help make sure that they have some control over that spot price, that it's not being manipulated by the West. But it doesn't stop there. This all plays into something much bigger, a multi-trillion-dollar strategy called the Belt Road Initiative, where China funds telecom, railroads, highways, energy grids, you name it, binding partner nations to them, because these nations, they don't want more dollar debt, right? They are done after seeing sanctions in 2022 against Russia. And after being concerned about the future of the US and what's going to happen with our debt, what are they doing instead? Well, now they are partnering with China. And since fiat currency in general, trust has collapsed, if they don't want to partner with them and use yuan, well, then guess what? They now have the infrastructure in place to use gold as the settlement, not currency, because gold isn't currency, it's real money, but as the settlement asset, I guess you could say. So it strengthens the yuan where possible and also continues to position China as the center of this new gold-backed monetary system that's being created, where the dollar is pushed clear to the sidelines. See, anyone who's pish-posh the idea of the dollar falling or that the dollar wouldn't always be the global reserve currency comes back to one argument, that there isn't another currency that's as powerful as strong. And they would be right. There isn't, but that doesn't mean there isn't an asset, specifically gold, that cannot be devalued or sanctioned against you that would create this loophole, which is exactly what China is working on. In fact, back in May, it was speculated, there are rumors that supposedly China and Saudi Arabia might be working together as part of the Shanghai Gold Exchange to create a gold vault in Saudi Arabia where yuan would be converted into gold for oil purchases. Now, before I explain this in more detail, can anyone here tell me why this would be such a big deal? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And tell me, do you think that all of this is a big deal? Do you think that this is all blown out of proportion? Or do you think that China is positioning themselves and gold to be the center of the new monetary system? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, Saudi Arabia and China working together is a huge deal because of a little something called the petrodollar agreement. Back in 1971, when President Nixon delinked the dollar from gold, there was a crisis because there wasn't demand for US dollars and the US had to think fast. What did they do? Well, they created an agreement where the US would provide military support to Saudi Arabia in exchange for all oil to be priced in dollars. See, the petrodollar, it's not its own currency. It's an agreement. It's essentially that the US dollar is backed by demand for oil. Any country that wanted to purchase oil would have to have and use US dollars, right? This is how it kind of worked. Now, this has been working in the US's favor for decades, ever since the 70s. But there have been cracks forming, such as Saudi Arabia and other OPEC nations having interest in joining the BRICS alliance, right? And not that anything has been shaken officially with the petrodollar, but should China and Saudi Arabia find some loopholes and start pricing oil in something different, and then it ends up boosting the yuan and creating a way for countries to use oil without having to have dollars, well, we could see a decline in the dollar happen very rapidly. But again, I'm not saying that this is happening overnight, right? That the petrodollar is done or all these things are happening immediately. But I am saying that with every single new rule relaxation, with every new vault expansion, with the central clearing, with all of these different things that China is clearly doing, in addition to stockpiling as much gold as possible, it does chip away at that dollar dominance because they are clearly creating an alternate system, right? Kind of forging this new monetary system where the dollar will not be at the center of it. And I think to cover our eyes or stick our head in the sand and pretend this isn't happening is not a real strategy. We've seen what happens before when fiat currencies lose their positions of power, when the debt printing gets too high, right? That's when the currency is devalued, which directly impacts your savings, your checking, your retirement, all dollar denominated. In fact, we study currency life cycles here at ITM Trading because we can learn a lot from history and they always follow the same pattern, except this time is arguably going to be worse because we are the global reserve currency. Now, if you want to learn more about currency resets and the stages of a currency reset, where we are today in that timeline and how to protect yourself, I am doing a totally free webinar. It is this Thursday, September 25th at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you haven't already, be sure to register so I know you're coming. You can do so by scanning the QR code, or you can click the link in the description below. Either way, I hope to see you there. We have a ton of great information as well as doing a live Q&A. But that being said, if you have questions about any of this, or you want to know more about how you can protect your wealth with a strategy that involves gold and silver for everything that's coming next, go ahead and call us at the number below, or there's a link below where you can click on the Calendly and set up a time to talk to one of our expert analysts. To be honest, things are happening and moving fast. I don't think there's enough reporting on what's going on, which is why I will continue to bring you this information. If any of this is something that you think someone in your life would benefit from knowing and understanding, please be sure to like and share. It helps us a lot. And of course, we want to try and educate as many people as we can. And in the meantime, thank you so much for being here. I'm Taylor Kenney with ITM Trading, your trusted source for all things gold, silver, and lifelong wealth protection. Until next time.